Imagine walking into a sprawling office at Koch Industries, where every detail seems meticulously crafted, but not in the traditional corporate way. There's no towering CEO office or lavish decor. Instead, you're greeted by open spaces, collaboration hubs, and a culture of trust where everyone is encouraged to think like an owner, regardless of their title. This is the world of Charles Koch, the CEO of Koch Industries, one of the largest privately held companies in the world. But what really sets Charles apart isn't just his strategic vision or impressive business acumen. It's his deeply unconventional approach to leadership that has shaped an empire. He isn't your typical billionaire CEO. His leadership style isn't about top-down command. It's not about demanding loyalty through fear or power. Instead, Charles Koch is driven by an almost radical belief in the potential of people. His philosophy, known as market-based management, is about unleashing the full capacity of individuals by fostering an environment that rewards personal growth, creativity, and accountability. But this isn't a buzzword. Charles doesn't just talk the talk. He walks the walk. His management principles are woven into every part of Koch Industries, from the way employees are treated to how decisions are made, to the emphasis on continuous learning. And what's truly fascinating is that this leadership style has led to Koch Industries achieving decades of consistent growth and innovation, even in an era of fierce competition and changing markets. So as we dive into today's episode, we're going to explore how Charles Koch's industry leadership, built on principles of freedom, responsibility, and empowerment, has shaped not just a business, but an entire corporate culture. How does a man, often considered a bit of an enigma, turn a family-owned business into a global powerhouse? Stay tuned, because the answer might just challenge everything you thought you knew about leadership. Welcome back to Leaders, a podcast dedicated to exploring the best leaders this world has ever seen, and your number one source for actionable business leadership insights. And today's subject, episode 45, will be on Charles Koch. Charles has a book, The Science of Success, that was the primary source within the research and the leadership insights that will be shared today. And that brief introduction there probably gives you a glimpse into some of his philosophies and how he has built one of the largest and most successful private companies in the world. So let's start by imagining a leader who has transformed sort of what started as a small family business into one of the largest private companies in the world. Charles is the CEO and chairman of Koch Industries and is a testament to visionary leadership. His journey is marked by strategic decisions, innovative management philosophies, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. So let's dive into that captivating story, including the transformation of Koch Industries, defining some of his defining career moments, and of course, we will focus mostly on what makes up his leadership style, what makes him a great leader. So in 1967, Charles took the reins of his family business, then a medium-sized oil firm. He renamed it Koch Industries in honor of his father, who we will go into more detail further as having a large influence on him, and embarked on a journey of expansion and diversification. Through strategic acquisitions and a focus on innovation, it grew exponentially, becoming a global conglomerate with a presence in over 70 countries. It's the largest privately held company by revenue in the United States. And so what were some of the kind of defining career moments and principles that got him there? First, we'll start with this idea of market-based management. And so he developed that unique management philosophy, emphasizing mutual benefit, integrity, and customer centricity. It's been instrumental in driving their success by fostering a culture of innovation and operational excellence. It's a vision. It also nurtures personal qualities of humility and integrity that build the trust and confidence to enhance future success. Also learning through failure. We will define and call out a lot of his failures and challenges that got him to having that as a foundation, as well as a culture of thinking in terms of opportunity cost and comparative advantage for all employees. This market-based management is also defined by 5 different dimensions, which we will walk through here briefly. The first being vision. So we touched upon his idea of visionary leadership. So vision and what he defines as determining where and how an organization can create the longest and greatest long-term value. It's dynamic and it's not just a one-time thing. He says companies that lack a vision also lack purpose. They're missing a goal to strive for and a path to growth and greater returns. His vision is probably different from most because it's focused on this idea of value creation in people. The lack of an effective vision or a conflict of vision is a root cause of the failure of many great businesses, he says. Each business vision needs to be aspirational in order to expand the thinking of its leaders and employees throughout that organization. The vision is also to create long-term value by economic means for customers, society, as well as the company. Customers come first in this list because without them, there is no business. And then in deciding which business to pursue, Charles, looks at how we can make good profit in the long term. This is fundamental to the vision because unless a business creates value for others, it will cease to exist. The second dimension he mentions is virtue and talents. So he defines that as helping ensure that people with right values, skills, and capabilities are hired, retained, and then developed. So an idea of trusting, valuing, and also empowering your people. He understands that people are their greatest asset and that being a manager doesn't mean that that person is always right. He says the old cliche is true. Good people are a company's most valuable resource. They are also essential for good profit. I join Jack Clark in feeling grateful for everything and entitled to nothing, especially grateful for all the great good people. Organizations should treat people as individuals according to their virtue, talents, and contributions. Teamwork requires honesty, dignity, respect, and sensitivity. Making people feel appreciated leads to better long-term results. So just like owners usually take better care of their property than renters do, when an employee owns, quote-unquote, well-defined areas at work, she takes greater pride and responsibility for outcomes, and then that greatly improves the results. He later goes on to say that at Koch Industries, we have found that each employee can help experiment and improve our ability to get results through MBM market-based management. In fact, employee innovations and contributions constitute most of the examples that he outlines in the book. And he follows a vision that focuses on what our employees can do to seize opportunities to create value for our customers. Freeing people to explore new approaches within his guiding principles leads to that innovation. The concept that the person with the comparative advantage to make that decision well, not necessarily the highest ranking person, should be the decision maker, leads to greater value creation. A few more thoughts here on this virtues and talents section. Decisions should not be made by those in closest proximity, but rather those with the comparative advantage to make sound decisions, including the best knowledge. So this idea of like hierarchy and the decisions being made at the top really doesn't exist in his organization, nor does he believe that drives the best value. He wants every employee's opinion to matter, and we've seen this within other leaders that we've studied. And their kind of customer-centric philosophy, but then also empowering their employees to have a say within what they do. No matter your role in the company, he says, you should actively seek knowledge and alternative points of view. If the goal is to develop a culture that will be competitive in the long term, it's crucial for a company to give its people the right amount of responsibility to seek a better state. Part of how that will be achieved is knowledge processes. So this is creating, acquiring, sharing, and applying relevant knowledge, but also measuring and tracking profitability. And this really forms into information, knowledge, and sharing, and how that is relayed via communication. So he has some thoughts on this. This one speaks for itself. There's no stronger form of communication than that of face-to-face sharing. Having a better point of view than our competitors has been a key driver of success. Seek and use the best knowledge and proactively share your knowledge while welcoming challenges. In refining, as in all our businesses, developing a superior understanding of our markets really has been critical to their success and approach. And how do they do that? They study not only the history of a business or industry, but also existing and potential technologies, competitors, customers, applicable laws, and industry structures, and how all these factors are changing, both for industries we participate and for those we are considering. Then analyze the value chains, cost structures, future demand for the products, competitive positions of participants, and other meaningful factors and trends, seeking to really understand the future drivers and level of profitability for the various segments of relevant industries. Even so, recognizing that uncertainty guarantees that any point of view can, at best, only be directionally correct. Whether that goal is to cure cancer, build a smaller and faster smartphone, or develop a more efficient and environmentally friendly way of making nylon, disruptive innovation requires, again, creating, acquiring, sharing, and then applying that knowledge. And for a culture to create spontaneous order that contributes to discovery, it really does have to constantly seek, nurture, and then implement that new knowledge. Finally, knowledge sharing isn't just important for innovation. Seeking, sharing, discussing, or challenging ideas and plans plays a crucial role in every aspect of an organization's success. Replicating the way the scientific community organizes itself, wherein knowledge is shared freely with a commitment to disproving even the most cherished hypotheses. That also is a process that leads to innovation. Fourth dimension is decision rights. So ensuring that right people are in the right role with the right authority to make a decision and holding them accountable. So once again, leadership and the erosion of bureaucratic empires is vital for growth, innovation, and success. Command and control companies are less innovative and less competitive over time. There's really a tendency for many successful companies to rest on their laurels and become complacent, self-protective, and less innovative. In such bureaucratic cultures, employees can survive only by running with the herd. Decline sets in. Verbal exchanges lead to the discovery of new and better ways to create value. When such exchanges are hampered by overbearing taboos, bureaucracy, systems, procedures, tenure, knowledge hoarding, egos, or hierarchy, knowledge sharing is stifled. At Koch, truth is what gets results. It is what stands the test of evidence and criticisms, not what someone in the hierarchy declares is true. 5, the fifth dimension here, finally, that is defining market-based management, is incentives. And we've talked at length about incentives. Charlie Munger quotes a lot of things around incentives and how they drive the behavior that exists within organizations and within society. And so incentives, when it comes to how Charles defines it, is rewarding people according to value that they create for the organization. So part of that, how do you establish the right incentives? So the reward should encourage innovation and long-term value. At Koch, the base pay is recognized as an advanced payment for the value an employee is expected to create for the company. With their approach, when individual employees create more value than the leaders, they're compensated more than the leaders, no matter what title. That same philosophy used by sports teams, in which the top performers are paid more than the coach. Every company should strive to leverage incentives to motivate all employees to fully develop and apply their capabilities to maximize long-term value for the company in a principled way. At Koch Industries, he says they don't reward roles or positions, rewarding individuals for specific contributions and results, not for some generalized or averaged result. At Koch, anyone can earn more than his boss if he creates more value. Our goal is to motivate all employees to maximize their contribution, regardless of the role. All incentives, whether financial or not, should motivate each employee to fully develop her aptitude to create value, to innovate, and drive creative destruction. At Koch, they also do use incentives to attempt to align the interest of each employee with the interests of the company, the customers, and society. Pay employees basically a portion of the value that they create for the company. And then if we don't hold those employees, especially leaders, accountable for results and instead continue to compensate them the same regardless of their performance, undermine really the whole system. Aligning those incentives with performance almost always improves the outcomes overall. And then, so those were 5 dimensions of the market-based management. There's some other guiding principles within there. He lists out kind of 10 different ones of those guiding principles. Those 10 are folded into that and include integrity, compliance, value creation, principled entrepreneurship, customer focus, knowledge, change, humility, respect, and finally, fulfillment. Another thing that we mentioned was that all this success did not come without some challenges and failures. So one thing that he mentions is overcoming challenges and facing those, including legal disputes with his brothers, navigating market volatility. The resilience and ability to adapt has been really pivotal in steering his company through turbulent times. So what are his philosophies on the idea of failure and challenges, and how did he really work through those? He says mainly it's to take risks and accept that failure and the acceptance are integral to growth and learning as well as success. A few quotes that he helps to drive this home with are: confusing as it might seem, failure and getting results are not mutually exclusive. When driving experimental discovery within a company, failure is not desirable, but it should be expected. Sometimes today's positive results can only be derived from lessons of yesterday's failed experiments. As Einstein observed, failure is success in progress. The model for growth today under Koch Industries is one of trial and error process. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Progress, whether in business, in economy, or science, comes through experimentation and failure. Those who favor a grand plan over experimentation fail to understand that failed experiments play in creating progress into society. The practice of exiting businesses with limited potential for us and focusing on ones with greater potential has been also a key element within success. He can never really undo all the damage that has been done by management or leadership failures, but I can commit myself to improving as a result of these management failures and helping others avoid the same mistakes. So really breeding this culture of accepting failure, taking risks, and let's get more into what he defines as what's most relevant within the culture of Koch Industries and what he's trying to build. And so first thought on on culture is that he feels that leaders are specifically the guardians of culture and are held accountable for it. To be effective, they must internalize and consistently apply some of the sound principles in a way that produces results. He says, for us, culture is key. Every organization has its own culture. If that culture is not created consciously and purposefully, it will degenerate into a cult or personality or an anything goes environment. Whether good or bad, an organization's culture is determined by the values, beliefs, and conduct of its members, as well as rules and incentives set by its leaders and modeled by them behaviorally. It requires focus, discipline, and persistence to produce a culture dedicated to superior results. Koch's culture promotes behaviors and individual conduct over functional competency. This shows out in the hiring policies. So market-based management also places a great focus on culture and on hiring based not just on skills, but on what we touched upon, the other defining principle of virtues and talents, with the goal of ensuring businesses and leaders foster integrity, courage, compliance, and respect. Many companies have principles somewhat similar to Koch's guiding principles, but rarely are they the basis for the culture of the company. And so that's what he differentiates here. As Koch, we strive to hire and retain only those who embrace the principles. Innovation, accountability, and leadership are all integral to a successful culture. And to build really a culture of discovery, we must encourage, not discourage, the passionate pursuit of hunches, no matter their origin. A culture that lacks accountability, lacks integrity, and can't survive, let alone thrive. Leaders must solicit the best knowledge internally and externally and create a culture in which the best knowledge is used regardless of the source. It is also particularly important for everyone to embrace a challenge culture, both by soliciting different perspectives and expertise and by having the courage to constructively speak up when we disagree. Finally, with culture, because leaders are setting the standard both by how they lead and by what they do, they are the guardians and must be held accountable for that culture. Again, re-emphasizing that point. Humility, he says, is also a fundamental trait of a successful culture and leadership. His father, Fred, exemplified much of what is at the core of Koch's culture: the value of hard work, integrity, humility, and a lifelong dedication to learning. Guard against self-assuredness. None of us at Koch can ever declare victory and lose focus on what matters. Arrogance is one of the most destructive traits of organization. We all instead need to exemplify humility and intellectual honesty as vital attributes of the culture. He also doesn't consider any work I do good enough, because complacency and eventual decline are embedded into that mental model. Finally, complacency and defense of the status quo are surefire prescriptions for business failure, because creative destruction is always with us. He also emphasizes the idea to provide frequent and honest feedback to identify opportunities for improvement within his culture as well as within his employees. Part of that is empowerment and decentralization, so believing in giving those employees autonomy to make decisions within their framework of clear values. That approach really promotes innovation, entrepreneurial spirit within the organization, continuous improvement, encouraging them to seek ways to improve processes and products, fostering that culture of innovation and excellence. Finally, let's finish with a few thoughts on who were the main influences on his life, mentors and heroes wise. So his leadership style was largely influenced by his father, Fred, who instilled in him the importance of hard work and innovation. His brother, David, was also a significant figure, contributing to the company's engineering business and embodying integrity and resilience. Additionally, Charles has also been influenced by free market thinkers and philosophers, aligning his business practices with principles of mutual benefit and social responsibility. He does quote a few different author influences: Michael Polanyi, Adam Smith, F.A. Hayek, that kind of fit under this sort of philosophy influence on his leadership style. His dad, he also sees as a mentor. He had a great influence on me and the company, he says. He was a John Wayne type figure, charismatic and forceful, with great integrity and humility and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Similar to what we saw in episode 39. Episode 39, we covered Sakichi Toyoda of Toyota Auto, and that was very manufacturing-led, continuous improvement standpoint, and one of his influences there was Edward Deming, and so Charles actually uses the practices of Edward Deming as well, so a parallel there. In addition to that, one of the quotes within the covers of the book was actually from Rob Walton, the son of Sam Walton. Sam Walton we covered on episode 19. Rob says his father, Sam, stressed the importance of fundamental principles such as humility, integrity, respect, and creating value. And those are really the foundation for success. No one makes a better case for the principles than Charles. So some similarities there too with one of the great leaders that we've covered already. Charles's intellectual and philosophical development was shaped really by several key mentors beyond sort of his father. One of the other influences would include Robert Lefevre. He was a radical libertarian thinker who profoundly influenced his political philosophy. Koch was drawn to his Freedom School in Colorado Springs, which offered immersion courses in the philosophy of freedom and free enterprise. By 1966, he had become a major funder and trustee of the school. Lefevre, who called himself an autocrat because he disliked the label anarchist, held views that were deeply skeptical of modern American government. Milton Friedman's economic theories also significantly shaped Koch's thinking. Charles was so influenced by him that he would play recordings of his works for his son Chase when Chase was only 9 or 10 years old. The John Birch Society, which his father Fred helped found, was an early influence also on Charles that later broke from over disagreements about the Vietnam War and what he considered far-fetched conspiracy theories. Despite this break, the organization's anti-government sort of stance likely influenced his developing worldview. Those mentors helped shape his sort of philosophy, emphasis on the free markets, some of the other leadership style stuff that we've discussed here, limited government intervention, individual liberty, principles that have guided his business practices, but also his personal involvements and things. And so Charles, his leadership legacy, what do we take from it, really? It's really a testament to the power of the vision, being a very visionary leader, and what he saw with the business and what he wanted to create, and continuing to kind of drive home his guiding principles and his kind of concept of market-based management. He had vision, he definitely innovated, and then he had resilience. His commitment to principled entrepreneurship has not only transformed Koch Industries, but also inspired a new generation of leaders there, as well as other organizations. As we sort of really reflect on that journey, we're reminded that true success comes from empowering others, embracing challenges, and staying true to one's values. So with that will be episode 45 on Charles Koch, and we will be back here soon for episode 46. Thanks for listening.